And boom, and we're live. And good evening. And well, man, we've got a short amount of time, so I don't want to do any kind of stupid, pre introductions or anything. I just want to go straight into it and say, well, how you doing tonight, my brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate the welcome on the show. I'm happy to be here.
Well, man, I think we just want to go straight into it. I mean, obviously for listeners and stuff, they can go back and they can watch the or listen to the podcast we had with Corey. But you're obviously the executive producer for the Blackness Project. So I kind of really, while we've got a sort of short amount of time and we're here, I kind of really want, what particularly, while we're here in 2016, what is it particularly that you really want to focus on? I know there's been a lot of work around trying to raise awareness and trying to, you had sort of some issues with the Kickstarter and stuff. So particularly right now, what is it, here you are, what is it that you think you really want to get across to people about the Blackness Project?
Well, I think that the main thing is we want to focus and tell people how much the Blackness Project is needed, in society in general. In America here, we have, racial tensions are at an all-time high. With all the issues in the news, from a lot of, from the Black Lives Matter and just a lot of young African Americans being killed, racial tensions are just at an all-time high right now. And our director, Corey Green, he and I, we've actually known each other for quite a while, and we were working together on another project. And being from Buffalo, New York, just a quick statistic, Buffalo is the 6th most segregated city in the United States. So we experience, hints of race on a normal routine basis all the time. And we kind of, we're working together on another project, and we experienced some racism. And Corey kind of, at the time I was writing for a local newspaper, Corey told me that I needed to write a column about this. And, I have to date about 7 years filmmaking experience, and Corey has, more than myself. He has at least 10 years. And I said, well, you know what? Fuck writing a column. Let's do a movie about this. So we came across this other movie called The Whiteness Project, which is a similar documentary to ours, and it explored the loss of white privilege in America. Now, the irony in that, because it's a legitimate topic, that people can discuss, but the irony in discussing the loss of white privilege is that the film was taped, with interviewees from Buffalo, New York. So this filmmaker did a film discussing the loss of white privilege in the 6th most segregated city in the country. Come on. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we saw the need to do a film which was a counterpart to that. Now, it's not so much of a versus thing, because what we're trying to do is bridge the gap, okay? And to say, okay, we understand that there's people in our local community that may feel the way that they spoke in the Whiteness Project. But we want to offer a different perspective, from the African American and other minority perspective here, right in our local area in Buffalo. And hopefully, what I believe is that a lot of active discrimination, racism, and things of that, it comes primarily from a misunderstanding, from a lack of knowledge of the other person. People fear what they don't know, and that's the main thing. So, because they fear what they don't know, how about let's shed some light on these topics. Let's have these uncomfortable conversations, because at the end result, we can have a deeper understanding from one another and hopefully get to another level.
Man, exactly. And I think it's, before we went live, I think it's absolutely essential, these conversations I had, because and let's speak the truth here, man. Let's be real. These conversations aren't going on the media and the mainstream, and that's my big concern about this age we live in, that we're becoming now. Hey man, we could get down a whole rabbit hole. This has been a tactic used by those in power for years and years and years, and goes on back into history. They've always wanted to divide and conquer us all. Now I think this is why I really feel excited about the times we live in, because for the first time, what you just mentioned, we've gone from being, when we were just living in fields, so we hated anyone outside our bloodline, and it was hate everyone outside the that beyond the hill. And now, just what I'm trying to say, we've got internet, we've got all these connections going on, and these barriers are starting to bubble down, and we can have these conversations. Man, I'm speaking to you, but underlying all that, we've almost, I don't know how you feel about this, and I come across this over and over again with every guest I speak to in this podcast. There's this rising wave of people who are afraid to say anything anymore because they're afraid to offend, they're afraid to upset, and all that happens is free speech just gets lost, and then we become more and more divided. So I think it's really important that we discuss these things. Now, you mention all this, and it's, again, I'm sat here in Scotland. I look at this only from a very long distance away. What is the number one main issue right now that you think that people aren't bringing to the table that they're too afraid to speak about?
Well, I think that, it's a combination of several things. When we talk about, I think the main point is this, is that there are different cultures that just are different. Difference doesn't necessarily mean bad. Different just means different. That's all it is. So people, because right now we're in an age of, you never discuss politics, you don't discuss religion out in public, and things of that sort. So when it comes to those differences, people shy away. They don't want to have these conversations, all right? They do behind closed doors, and behind closed doors, it's more so the things that you've been taught as a kid, and maybe not your own views from what you experience. It's, you don't want to have these conversations out in public. So yeah, I'm gonna, this is what I learned growing up, so I can talk about it behind closed doors. So the main things is that we want to talk about, and I know from the African American community, we want to address, not to say equality, but we want to address, the things. It's similar to what the Black Lives Matter. Their main thing is that they want to talk about the injustices that are happening to African Americans, today. They want to address, the stereotypes, okay, that possess African Americans, right now, and just the stigma, the fear stigma. There was a stat in the film called The Whiteness Project where they said that 40% of white Americans believe that Black men are violent. That's like totally fucking nuts. I mean, keep in mind, I think that is it could be true to one person's experience, but to say that as a masses that they believe we're violent, so those are some of the things that we want to address. The fear, why do you have this fear, of African Americans, and again, I just think it all boils down to misunderstandings, and all these preconceived notions and assumptions that they have, of our community. So the Blackness Project is we're giving minorities of all social classes an opportunity to speak freely. That's what we want, because when you speak freely, they can address how they really feel. We have a one interviewee on there that tells a story about how she goes to school in a predominantly white neighborhood, and as she walks down the street, she can feel the eyes on her back. Why is that? Why is that? Those are things that need to be addressed. And it's not fair to anybody, to feel that way. This is a 15-year-old girl that's telling this story. So those are just some of the things, we want to have these conversations. It's going to make people uncomfortable. We know that. We're prepared for that. The Whiteness Project, I think people were speaking freely, but as an African American, it made me feel uncomfortable. And I think that you have to have those uncomfortable conversations in order to go forward.
Yeah, you're damn right, man. And I think one of the things that I'm sure it's exactly the same, in America, where you are right now as to where it is over here, is everything is divided into teams. You're into this team, you're into that team, and I think, and a lot of this, man. And I don't know, and I don't want to speak because I don't know America as it does. But again, I just look at it from an outside perspective. But man, I would say a lot of the real issues that probably you face and other people face, and generally human beings are facing, is an ingrained racism from the very fucking top. I mean, I don't care what anybody says, man. It's one of the differences between us over here and you over there. I mean, it's only just beyond my lifetime ago that people were being segregated in the back of buses, and we still got the drug war going on. That's another big white elephant in the room that everyone wants to talk about. And what's all that based on, man? It's all this deep ingrained. And you think kids are going through school and they're maybe not being taught by teachers, but it's there all the time. And and again, I mean, let's flip this round. What's been given the ideal for black communities in the last 20, 30 years? Oh, it's all about going around shooting people and being the biggest pimp in the town. And it's not, this is all just a part of this media culture that we live in. And the real wake up moment is what is crucial we need to get to, is where we all speak to each other and on one-to-one, and we start to see each other one-to-one, because like you say, there's good and bad in every culture, man. That's life. We're all good. That's people as people. We need to break down this ridiculous thing. And here we are in 2016 still talking about race and skin, and to me it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I could have done with this 20 years ago, that fair enough, but 2016, man, we should be more enlightened than this now.
It's so tough, because I don't know, realistically speaking, right? So our film, okay, that Corey and I are doing, it's also what we like to call a story within a story. So what I mean is that it's also Corey and I quest, on how can we better ourselves, how can we better our community, so it's not just all, one-on-one interviews with these people. We have certain things that we're doing, and it's conversations with us on how we can better our community. Now, the thing is this, is that I don't know if this film or even anything in general is going to heal what's been going on from the start of mankind. You know what I'm saying? Because this is something that has it's been different races of people from the beginning of time, and this is something I don't know if we're ever going to ever be able to move forward. But it's our personal quest in trying to create healing, and I think that's what every person has to ask themselves. What are you doing in order to heal, this issue of racism? Because it's not just here in America. It's not just where you are. This is a worldwide issue, okay? So essentially, it starts with every single one of us. And my quest, in order to do this, is this film. That's what Corey's quest is. So that's what everyone has to ask themselves. What are you doing in order to better yourself as a human being, not as an American, as if you're from Scotland or if you're from Europe, as a human being? What are you doing to better yourself in order to heal this problem?
Exactly, and this is exactly my point. And this is why maybe I get more passionate as I get older in my life, because I'm thinking 20 years ago there was an excuse for this. Well, I never saw it as an excuse, but people go, okay, you have to go and search knowledge in libraries. Man, we're entering an age and an era where there's no excuse for anybody else right now. You can have the choice to go and sit and watch an hour of crappy TV, or you could go and have an hour and educate yourself. And I don't think there's any more excuses for anyone. I took this 20 years ago, and people going, oh, but it's difficult. Well, hey, I always look at it and say, well, anybody that says to me it's difficult and these issues are not worth doing, as you say, it comes down to a point. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem, or and it's time to get out of the way. And if you're not going to be part of it, well, hey, that's your life, but the rest of us need to evolve. And that's why I think it's important that I particularly say I want to raise the issue. I love to raise the flag and raise as much awareness as what you're doing, because as I say, the world is becoming more and more. And this is why I'm optimistic that we're entering an age where these free conversations are going to happen, and that's not going to be able to. Nobody's going to stop. For instance, the decentralization of the internet, the ability to have more free conversations where nobody can pull your stuff down. These are the baby steps to hopefully, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in your lifetime, brother, but hopefully, maybe in our kids' generation, these conversations, they'll be looking back at us and going, oh man, some people really were on the wrong side of history.
Right. Absolutely. I agree, man.
Man, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and I think the other thing as well, I mean, I really kind of, it ties into, with some of the other projects you've done with, with other things. But I think this really boils down to, and I think this is one of the other things that reads the way, this isn't just us being polite, having this conversation. When it breaks down to, this is real people, man. I mean, I know that Corey touched upon it, and these people dying and stuff, man. And this is why it's important to have these conversations raised. Now, I mean, you sort of mentioned it and stuff like that. I mean, you kind of gave me a glimpse of what it's like in Buffalo. I mean, again, I mean, I watched some, the Buffalo, the project and all that, and I try to sort of understand again. But what is it like, man, to sort of grow up in these environments? I mean, do you think the environment itself is having a lot of detrimental damage to human beings? Just the environment they're growing up in.
Well, I tell you what, man. For me personally, Corey and I, we grew up in the same neighborhood. Okay, in an urban neighborhood, in Buffalo, New York, the east side of Buffalo, where it's predominantly African American. It is just a urban section of town. Now, I grew up. I had two parents, and my parents made sacrifices. So what they did for me was that they wanted to send me to a prep school for high school. Okay, so every morning I had to get up, catch two buses to, from the east side of Buffalo to go to this prep school, for high school. And in the beginning, I fucking hated it because I'm like, I wanted to just go to the neighborhood school with all the rest of the kids. But my problem that I had, okay, and I enjoyed my high school experience, but the problem that I had was that when I got to high school, I couldn't fit in there, okay, because I was the only black kid there. So now here I am, okay, taken out of the environment that I'm comfortable in, okay, put into another environment where I am the minority, I'm the only black kid there, and I'm forced to experience all these things that I'm just not used to. And now also, then when I had to go home, I had to catch two buses to go home, all the kids in my neighborhood are looking at me differently because I go to this prep school, So I had a problem fitting in no matter where I went, So for me, it was this constant quest that I was on internally to bridge the gap, okay, to say, to my black friends, in my neighborhood that no, it's okay. I have white friends. I go to this school. It's okay. You just don't understand them. And then when I was at school with my white friends, it was my job to educate them into black culture because they had no connection to it other than me. So I've always kind of just stuck out and have always tried to find my way, So for me, growing up in Buffalo was a great experience, but that's why this project is so passionate for me because it feels like I've been on a personal quest for 35 years to get people to understand one another.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of that. And every individual has their own experience in Buffalo. Buffalo let me just tell you, first and foremost, I love my city. I love the place that I grew up in. I wouldn't change it for the world. Does it need some improvements? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Reason being is that Buffalo is just very segregated. The blacks live on one side, the Italians live on another, the Puerto Ricans live over here, and there's no rhyme or reason for that. It just is that way, from my experience. But again, because people are so segregated in their own little pockets, that's what's been my personal quest, to try to get people to understand one another and get on one playing field. Come on in.
Yeah,
I got a prize for you as well here, man.
Oh, cool, man.
Are you okay, brother?
Hey, how you doing, brother, man? How you doing?
Brethren? Hey!
How you doing, brother? How you doing, man?
Boss?
That's really good, man. Well, we were just talking about yourself and Buffalo, man, and growing up in in those kind of things. And again, I think while we're here and while we're on the this being real, this conversation, I think one of the other issues, and again, I think is really need to be spoken about in White Elephant is basically how, I mean, again, and I don't know how this is particularly in Buffalo, but the amount of kids growing up in single families, man, the amount of black, I'll be real here, man, the amount of black guys that are just basically just dropping kids everywhere and not bringing up their sons, and then these kids are growing up with no fathers, and then this is another big white elephant in the room that doesn't seem to be discussed a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point when you just say dropping kids everywhere, because even a lot of my peers, a lot of people, a lot of friends that I grew up with, I don't think they think about the long-term destruction that's happening here with, kids without a father. I grew up single-parent home, and most of my friends did as well, and I just think that's an interesting point. I'm gonna have to.
No, it's not even that. Let me just tell you. See, what we also talk about, see, the Blackness Project is also, again, it's from the minority perspective, but our last chapter in it is what's called hope. So in that hope chapter, it's also self-reflective, okay, about the problems that we're dealing with in our community, and also how do we get better solutions, you know, and how can we solve some of the issues. So it's not all just, you know, white people think this of us and this and that. It's also, we understand some of the issues that we're dealing with ourselves, and it's also, it's the last chapter is very self-reflective, you know. So I think that when you talk about, you know, some of those issues, man, it's more so education, you know, has to play a bigger factor, okay, in that, because once these fathers, like, you know, what Corey was saying, you know, once they understand the effect that it's having on these kids, okay, in our community that are growing up fatherless, without any role models, without any people to look towards, you know what I'm saying? That educating those people in that will help solve some of those things, you know?
But even with that being said, we're going to have the section on hope and as well as solution. But with anything and with any real change, it has to start with the man in the mirror, and people have to start taking accountability. So you can't be like in the streets or doing all type of other sorts of things, having babies, in and out of jail, no education. Like, we have to start thinking, even as a people, even before we make those kind of decisions, we have to have our own personal life in order before you even bring another child to the world, if you don't have, you know, your own stuff in order. And that's just one small thing.
Absolutely. We talked about that. You know, we talked about, you know, it's what you are doing as an individual to, you know, help create change. Right. So you're right. It's about that accountability, you know, because each and every single one of us is accountable, you know, for ourselves. We're accountable for how we affect the community. We're accountable. You know, I'm accountable for my brother here. You know what I'm saying? He's accountable for me. Exactly. You know, so it's also, you know, it is that education. But you're right. We said that earlier. It's about taking accountability and what are you doing in order to help your community.
Yeah, man, and that's my thing, and that's why I think I'm really, you know, I try to sort of say it as much as I can in hashtags and everywhere. But I think the enlightenment key to all human beings is understanding that you are the brains of the central nervous system. You know, don't rely on anybody else. If you want, like you say, if you want to do something, yeah, man, we all grow up in shit. And I mean, like I was saying before, there's some big white elephants in the room. I mean, we haven't even touched upon about you know, there's more black guys now in prison in America than there was ever under slavery. I mean, these are, and you've already got the dice against you. You know, you're growing up in communities where, you know, that you've got the drug, like I said, the drug war in the corner of the room that no one ever talks about. There's just incarcerating men after men after men on this stupid, ridiculous war over a plant, you know. And these are some of the big efforts. But hey, with all these dice that are on the cards that are already there given for you, all you can do, which is anything you can tell individuals, is like, you are the brains of the central nervous system. If you want to do it yourself. Take control of the ownership of yourself, and we can all do that. And if we all did that, we could all just take that step forward.
Well, let me ask you something. Let me switch the gears here a little bit. What makes you so open-minded? Because even our first interview, me and you talk on Twitter, I feel like I've been knowing you for at least 20 years. Like, I have this like connection with you. And it's just like, if people have more open-minded thinking, like, and you're way over in the UK, we're in the United States. So how did your thinking, or what makes you see things the way you do, opposed to seeing them as like a typical, you know, well, I can't even say a typical white American because you're not American, but I just want to know, you know, what beats your drum and make you, you know, so passionate in how you speak and just even how you see things and even recognizing and acknowledging some of the Black struggle. Let me just ask you, let me switch the interview.
Well, no, man, that's an interesting point. I mean, I think a lot of it, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was brought up in a kind of back streets of London, so I was always surrounded by many kind of cultures. And you can imagine, like, London's got everybody from everywhere in the world. So that's how I, you know, as a child grew up. But I grew up in, I've said this many times, and I think it's got good and bad, but I grew up in a very religious family. And one of the things that I did take from that was, like, we're all just equal. We're all just born. We're all just these meat machines, basically. And then I as I got older, it wasn't the biggest thing for me was when I sort of realized that people were racist, and it blew my mind. Like, people were looking at people for different, how they were. And I think this is one of the things I've always said to people is I've always had that open mind, because I didn't choose to close it. And I think the other thing that's really, really valuable to people, and I say it to all the time, is go out and try to explore and see things. And I was lucky enough. I've been around the world, and I've been to Africa, and I've managed to see people. Once you spend any time with anybody, and you're sat around like we are now, almost like a campfire situation, man, it doesn't matter. It all drops away, because we all realize that at the end of the day, we all wake up, we all breathe, we all eat, we all shit, we all wake, we all sleep, we're all the same, man. And that's one of the things that really open up. And the other thing, and I don't know if it's a big difference between over here, and maybe it's why the British in general are probably a bit more less racist than maybe what you are over there. It's because I think a really big thing with it was football, soccer as we call it, because as I grew up, all my heroes were black, and we lived it. And don't get me wrong, man, I grew up in the 80s in London, and it was a racist culture, man. There was a lot of the National Front and all this sort of stuff. But these same people who were walking around with skinheads and Union Jack t-shirts and stuff would go down to a football match and be supporting the black guy, and it was just the hilarious of it all. But that's one of the things that really had. But again, this all breaks down to positive role models, seeing people that are, because it's easy. Like I was saying to Pete earlier on, we live in a culture, and we live in a time where I don't think it's ever going to stop. The media loves to push this paradigm of splitting us into cultures and splitting us into little divisions and stuff like that. And it's when we get that's why football is a great thing, because suddenly you're like, wow, we all like the same guy, and it doesn't matter if he's from Africa or he's from South America or whatever. He's part of us. And I think these are the things. Whereas I don't know what it's like in America, but when I look over to America, I sort of think that basically it's a bit different, because your sports are all like one color for this and one color for that, and it's you don't have a kind of that mixture of sport as much as we have, real. I don't know. These are some sort of things I have, but I think I'm always the other way around, Corey. I tend to think that we're all born with an open. I equate it to a laptop. We're all born with an open, clean sheet, and the things that you become racist nobody's born racist. When your two babies are born, they're not one. The little white kid doesn't look at the black kid and go, whoa, no. It's something you learn. And okay, well, fair enough. As I was trying to say earlier on, we're all taught this, we're all surrounded in this culture. But hey, if you've got some wisdom about you, and you've got the ability to have to think for yourself, even if you are racist, just start to question yourself. And this is one of the things that I've always tried to say is important to everybody. They need to, like what you do with the Blackness Project. Let's sit down everything and put it on the seat of reason and question yourself. And that makes you realize, hey, being racist or being this, that, or being that is just ego. And what's the point of having ego? And that's kind of, sorry, a very long-winded answer to that question, Pete, Corey.
No, it's good. I like what you said. I think we talked about it in the last show, where we all start off with a clean slate, and how we raise in our surroundings kind of paint the picture. Yeah, we did talk about it, because I use your picture as a metaphor, where you got to layer it, and then the colors come in, and you see the beauty in it. But if you have bad surroundings, bad teachings, a lot of that stuff, you're taught, and I don't think people are really taking accountability for that.
No, man, that's one of the things. And again, Corey, it's one of the things that really kind of I think, again, one of the really enlightening things for me was I went to South Africa about 6 months after the apartheid fell. And I'll tell you what, man, that was a really enlightening experience. When you see, I mean, you're talking about racism, and maybe it's a hidden racism, but when you saw it, as I did, and seeing it, how blatant it is, it's what's always driven me, and it's only driven me more. It's like, as I said to Pete earlier on, this is 2016. We do not need to be having these conversations in this day and age. And I just think it's ridiculous to me. But hey, as I said to Corey, and I was saying to you, Pete, earlier on, we've all got to be, and this is where we've all got to be as human beings. History will judge us, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of history. And that's simple as that. I don't want to be on that wrong side of history, that my grandkids will look back at me and go, because we can maybe look back at our grandparents and go, as I was saying to Pete, you earlier on, Pete, and go, oh, maybe our grandparents, we can excuse them a little bit because they didn't understand. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have television. And it was all, but hey, our grandkids are never going to forgive us, because if they look back at us and say you're on the wrong side of history, and they knew that we'll have this connection, man, I don't want to be on that. I don't want to be in it. Our grandkids, you know what I mean? It's going to be a harsh world when we're old men.
Right. Well, listen, we appreciate you featuring us today. We do have another interview we have to get to. Again, you know, we would like to tell your viewers, you know, to please just log online to www.theblacknessproject.org. Okay. You know, again, please learn about what we're doing, you know, right now. Please support it.
He knows everything that's going on.
He said,
He
yeah,
helps
please.
us a lot, man.
Okay.
I appreciate everything you do. You know, you're constantly tweeting, and you got like a lot of people in different countries following me now and kind of know what's going on. So don't worry, I'm gonna make it to UK.
Make it to the UK.
Man, just before we wrap up, and I have sort of told Corey this, but we're going to be doing a thing called sessions. We're going to be starting that this month, and my very first session will be my wallet will go up on there, and every donation will go towards the Blackness Project. I've already told Corey this. I will tell more about it, and I will start to introduce this more. But man, I as I said, and I'm quite happy to say to you too, and I'll only repeat what you both just said there, man. For people listening, go out and do as much research as you can, support this, and spread it, and tell people. And nothing else, reach out to you both, man. Before we do go, where can they reach out to you both, man?
All our information, all our contact information is on the website, theblacknessproject.org. Obviously, I'm on Twitter, Instagram. It's just Corey Green, Korey, Green as in the color, GREEN, and most of all our contact is on the website.
Yeah, all our contact is on the website. Feel free to log on to the website. You can email us. It comes to our personal accounts. You know, you can email us with questions, concerns. You know, if you have anything to say, please get it. We welcome all comments. We welcome, you know, just any feedback you can, and we promise that we will respond personally.
And we also are going to be starting a video blog as well, where we're going to be asking questions, and then we're going to have people submit the answers with the video blog. So that was something I want to tell you about as well. We're going to get that going, so we can get reactions from all over the world and just about the topics that we're addressing, and even getting engaged in the film. So.
Well, man, as ever, man, you know, both of you, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both. And as you both know, anytime you welcome this, anytime you like. And I think one time we need to really get down and maybe do like a 3-hour sit down and really just get down to the root and drill to the root.
We're going to do that in person. Once we're done, I'm coming here. I'm going to come and shake your hand, give you a hug, and I want to touch this picture. I always touch it through the computer. I got to touch it.
Scott, you got to drink some scotch.
Exactly, man. Scotch is more the thing. Well, man, for me over in here in Scotland, and from all the way over there in Buffalo, man, it's good night and life is people.
Right. Signing off. Take care, everybody. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Take you later, bud. Love you, people.